Hey guys, welcome back. Now let's get started with our day 10 walkthrough. You guys can go ahead and read the story here. So the learning objectives: learn to understand and identify SQL injection vulnerabilities, exploit stacked queries to turn SQL injection into remote code execution, help Elf Mekred restore the best festival website and save its reputation. SQL. Structured query language is essential for working with relational databases and building dynamic websites. Even if you have never explicitly used SQL before, chances are you frequently interact with databases. Whether you're checking your bank account balance online, browsing through products on an e-commerce website, or posting a status on social media, you're indirectly querying and altering databases. So this is an example of relational databases. PHP is a popular general-purpose scripting language that plays a crucial role in web development. It enables developers to create dynamic and interactive websites by generating HTML content on the server and delivering it to the client's web browser. PHP is a server-side scripting language, meaning the code is executed on the web server before the final HTML is sent to the user's browser. Unlike client-side technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, PHP allows developers to perform various server-side tasks such as connecting to a wide range of databases, executing SQL queries, processing from data, and dynamically generating web content. The most common way for PHP to connect to SQL databases is using the PHP Data Objects extension or specific database server drivers like MySQLi for MySQL or SQL SRV for Microsoft SQL Server. The connection is typically established by providing parameters such as the host, username, password, and database name. So this is an example of how we can execute SQL queries using PHP. SQL injection. Taking in user-supplied input gives us powerful ways to create dynamic content, but failing to secure this input correctly can expose a critical vulnerability known as SQL injection. SQL injection is an attack technique that exploits how the web applications handle user input, particularly in SQL queries. Instead of providing legitimate input, the attacker injects malicious SQL statements into a web application's input fields or parameters. The application's database server then executes this rogue SQL query. SQL injection vulnerabilities pose a considerable risk to web application as they can lead to unauthorized access, data theft, data manipulation, or even the complete compromise of a web application and its underlying database through remote code execution. If an attacker can control which queries the database executes, they can control the database functions performed and the data returned. As such, the impact can be catastrophic, ranging from exposing sensitive user information to causing significant data breaches. SQL injection vulnerabilities continue to be highly pervasive despite numerous advancements to mitigate them. This type of vulnerability is featured prominently in the OWASP Top 10 list of critical web application security risks. Without adequate security measures, an attacker could manipulate the color parameter to execute malicious SQL queries. For instance, instead of searching for a color, they might input this. Here the OR logical operator appends a secondary where condition in the query. And the 1:1 condition always remains true. And here we use the dash dash at the end to tell the database server to ignore everything that comes after it. Stacked queries. SQL injection attacks can come in various forms. A technique that often gives an attacker a lot of control is called a stacked query. Stacked queries enable the attackers to terminate the original query and execute additional SQL statements in a single injection, potentially leading to more severe consequences such as data modification and calls to stored procedures or functions. In SQL, the semicolon typically signifies one statement's conclusion and another statement's commencement. This feature facilitates the execution of multiple SQL statements within a single interaction with the database server. It's important to note that certain web application technologies and database management systems may demand different syntax or lack support for stacked queries. Enumeration is essential for precision when conducting injection attacks. So this here is an example of stacked queries. As you can see, it is separated by semicolons. Now let's see how we can test for SQL injection. To test the input fields, we can submit the characters like single quotes and double quotes, as these are special characters that attackers use to manipulate SQL queries. We might be able to trigger error messages by introducing possible syntax errors in the query and prove that the input is unsanitized as it reaches the backend. It's very important to read the error messages properly because it may contain very sensitive information which might be helpful to us later. As mentioned, stack queries can be used to call stored procedures or functions within a database management system. You can think of stored procedures as extended functions offered by certain database systems serving various purposes such as enhancing performance and security and encapsulating complex database logic. A Microsoft SQL Server Stored Procedure, XMP_CMD shell, is a specific command that allows for executing operating system calls. If we exploit a stacked query to call a stored procedure, we might be able to run operating system calls and obtain remote code execution. As we previously confirmed, the database management system in our example is Microsoft SQL Server. So now let's see how we can enable it. So here to enable this, here we are setting the show advanced options to true, and then we are applying the changes. Then we are enabling this by setting it to true, and then we are again applying the changes. Let's confirm if we have remote code execution by attempting to execute certutil.exe on target machine. This command is a native Windows command line program installed as a part of certificate services. It is handy in engagements because it is a binary signed by Microsoft and allows to make HTTPS connection. In our scenario, we can use it to make a HTTP request to download a file from the web server that we control to confirm that the command was executed. You can think of a reverse shell as a remote computer initiating a connection back to our attack box which we are listening for. Once the connection is established, we gain control of the remote system and interact with the target machine directly. This is the opposite of a typical remote access scenario where the user is the client and the target machine is the server. MSF Venom is a command line payload generation tool. It's a part of Metasploit framework, a widely used penetration testing and ethical hacking set of utilities. MSF Venom is explicitly designed for payload generation and can be used to generate a Windows executable that, when executed, will make a reverse shell connection back to our attack box. So this is how we can do it. So basically what we are doing here is we are generating a payload using the MSF Venom, and then we are setting up a HTTP server on a machine. Once the server is set up, we'll be able to access all the files in the attack machine through the server, including the payload that we have generated. So what we'll be doing here is we'll be trying to make the target website execute the payload we have generated through the server we have set up. So once the payload is executed on the target machine, it'll try to connect to a attack machine which we have given here on port 4444. So to capture that, we'll open up a listener on port 4444 using netcat here. Now that we have gained interactive control over the web server, let's see if any clues might help us restore the site. Exploring the system's user directory is a good place to start. The directory holds documents and information for each user profile on the system. It's worth mentioning that another legacy misconfiguration has worked in our favor, providing the SQL Server service account we connected with administrator level permissions on the system. This higher level of access may provide us with capabilities we need to investigate and rectify the issue. Navigate to the user's directory and explore the administrator folder. Here we'll search the subdirectories for hints or files that can guide us in restoring the website and saving the best festival company's reputation. So now let's go ahead and fire up our machine. So now let's answer the questions. Manually navigate the defaced website to find the vulnerable search form. What is the first web page you come across that contains the gift finding feature? So now let's go to a website. Let's click on Start My Gift Search. So this is the first web page with the gift finding feature. So let's copy this. So the next question is, analyze the SQL error message that is returned. What ODBC driver is being used in the backend of the website? So let's check for an error message. You can put in single quotes or double quotes here. So here we got our driver version. Inject the 1:1 condition into the gift search form. What is the last result returned in the database? What flag is in the node file gr33dstr left behind on the system? So now let's attack the machine. So to enable the xp-cmd shell, let's use this command. So now let's generate our payload. Type in your IP address here. Now let's set up a HTTP server. So now let's download the payload on the target. Enter your IP address here. So before executing the payload on the target, we have to set up a listener. We can use netcat to do that. So now let's go ahead and execute the payload. So as you can see here, we have got a shell here. So here we have found the node.txt. Now let's read it. So let's copy this here. Some error occurred here, so let's try to reconnect this. So the next question is, what is the flag you receive on the home page after restoring the website? So here we have a bad file that says restore website. Let's try to run that. So here it says, please refresh the home index.php. So now we have completed our day 10 walkthrough. Thank you for watching my video and stay tuned for more.